significant part of the world, not just the Americas. But to that end, we really need to articulate our efforts, integrate value chains, assure financing through the multilateral banks, so as to make sure that creation of jobs will sustain and contain migrants in each of our countries. In our country, this temporary protected status for Venezuelan migrants, which was adopted by President Ivan Duque, is just as everyone was being locked in by the pandemic. Well, this is a policy of solidarity, understanding that these migrants are also going to contribute to Colombia's development. And with this perspective, our country has been representing that positive vision of migration as reflected in several instruments of the Inter-American System, including, among others, Resolution 2910 of on migration in the Americas, which was approved in the General Assembly of 2017, as well as the Covenant on Safe and Regular Migration. And with that statute or status, we are reaffirming the value added that migrants can represent to our economies. Let me say one more thing with great sincerity. Colombia has not benefited from that migration of persons who have much more education, much more wealth, say, that other countries have benefited from. That first stage of migration of Venezuelan professionals and such is in Canada, the United States, Spain, Europe. We have received those who are less well off, have less education and training, but even so, we have taken on this challenge. And that public policy mechanism has that commitment to regularize these Venezuelan citizens, give visibility to them as persons with rights, make it possible for them to have equal access to education, to social security, to health. I want to confess that before I took office as Foreign Minister of Colombia, I had a trip to the United States in the midst of those terrible protests that we had in our country, financed, among other things, by drug trafficking. Not citizen protests. I'm talking about the vandalism that we experienced during the protests. And when I traveled, I did so with a clear purpose to ask the United States, and there I visited with Secretary Blinken, I asked for support in the form of vaccines, donations of vaccines, and I later went to Spain and Germany in order to do the same, to carry out that humanitarian objective, which is to ensure vaccines for the Venezuelans in our country, because, well, vaccines had been purchased, but we were taking into account our population, the Colombian population, but our administration has committed to ensure access to the same opportunities for Venezuelan migrants as for all Colombians. In March of last year, we were here before this council announcing a historic event for Colombia, which is the adoption of temporary protected status for Venezuelans, which no doubt is an unprecedented initiative in our region. Indeed, I think it is an example, including vis-a-vis countries such as in Europe, and which would allow our region to really take a step forward, assuming or taking on very realistically the possibility of each of us having some percentage, some certain number of those Venezuelans who continue to travel throughout the hemisphere in totally precarious situations and this is conditions. That is why I'd like to invite all the sister countries that what we have done in Colombia can be repeated. It can be improved upon. We have by no way claimed to have developed the state of the art. We're very proud of what we've done, but we believe that among us all, we can improve a temporary protected status that is region-wide, that would make it possible to absorb the migrants coming out of Venezuela today. Who knows what we'll be facing in the future, but we need to think about the possible Nicaraguan migration, Haitian migration, which is continuing, because we must recognize that if this region is not raising its voice on an ongoing basis, calling for democracy in all of the countries that I've just cited, including Cuba, then of course we're going to continue seeing this tragedy day after day of those migrants who are fleeing dictators, fleeing states where there's no recognition or promotion of human rights, or to the contrary, who leave their countries because they are beset by poverty, by need, by difficulties, and because there's no development. We must defend democracy. We must defend economic development in order to create jobs. We need to be able to turn into that region that is attractive because of its wealth in natural resources, because of its diversity, eh, because of the variety of different regions, but especially because of economic stability and juridical stability, which today is absent in several of our countries. To secure the socioeconomic inclusion of our Venezuelan brothers and sisters is not just a commitment of Colombia, it is the challenge that we have taken on passionately, with conviction, with love, really, for this long-suffering Venezuelan people, and this Venezuelan people who are sisters of it's a sister country of Colombia for blood ties that go back 200 years. So I reiterate this urgent call to the international community today to strengthen the commitment of us all, and obviously to support Venezuela, to support the reestablishment of democracy, to insist that there will be no solution to so many of the difficulties that the region is facing because of this migration if there's not a free presidential election, I hope soon in Venezuela, accompanied by the international community, the United States, Europe, Latin America, that guarantees the reestablishment of all electoral authorities and a reliable voter rolls. It's only this way, with a presidential election, that we'll be able to find that a good part of this pain of seeing 6 million human beings going hither and thither through our hemisphere, well, we could resolve it with this principle of humanity, but also with this commitment to shared responsibility, which we embraced in the Global Pact on Migration, and a good part of the commitments, well, understanding that politically, normatively speaking, financially speaking, we need to guarantee the handling, the incorporation of these migrants. And so I would like to tell you, Colombia has had donor roundtables, quite significant, where several countries have shown their willingness to provide support. But thus far, the resources that Colombia has actually received to support migrants does not is not more than 20% of the values that have been put forward at these roundtables. As President Ivan Duque said at the European Parliament in Strasbourg yesterday, this is not money that is for the Colombian state. This is money to pay for all of the services that the Venezuelan migrants have already received: health services, education for children, and obviously all the whole effort to incorporate them. While Latin America continues asking, the crisis, this exodus, this migration, we're all going to have to take on a commitment. It's our moral obligation to all take on at least part of this Venezuelan population, because the day that there's democracy in Venezuela, not only will they go back to their country, but many Latin Americans will find in Venezuela the opportunities for work and for development, and of course, the opportunities for growth, which today are possible. This is quite clear, yet they seem to be quite remote. I'd like to thank the Secretary General and the Chairman of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Everson Hull, for this issue that you've put on the table today, because we have to clearly understand that one of the objectives of the OAS is to achieve respect for the dignity of each and every human being who lives in this hemisphere. And that is why I am very pleased to now yield to the director of the Colombian Migration Agency, and after that, Lucas Gomez, who is the presidential manager of the presidential program for the border with Venezuela. Thank you very much. Luis, thank you to all. I thank all the members of the council. It's a great honor to have been invited once again to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President, for your very comprehensive presentation. The emphasis on migration, and in fact also the focus on value added of the individual matters a great deal. And I'm very delighted to see that you focused on those issues. And so we'd like now to give the floor to Dr. Juan Francisco Espinosa. He's the Director of Migration Issues in Colombia. You have the floor, Francisco Espinosa.
For this kind of opportunity. Un especial saludo, señora vicepresidenta.
Special greeting to the Vice President, and thank you very much for this opportunity, Secretary. Wonderful to see you again, and warm greetings, the same to you, ASG, and the same for other delegations. I'm going to ask you to pull up my presentation, the one that we prepared. Very briefly, we're going to look at the different points that will give us a chance to see how the temporary protection statute works. Next slide, please. The overall total of Venezuelans is 1,842,390 Venezuelan human beings. So this total, we have 344,688,000 in a regular situation, others that are underway to getting that status, 1,182,000. This is under the temporary protection statute, and 315,643 who are irregular. Nonetheless, things have been improving, but that's the overview. Now, what is the statute all about? It is color guided. There are various nations in our Americas where yellow is our first phase, and this particularly requires a virtual process in which each and every one of the people, heads of family, answer a socioeconomic survey, which will give us some data in the country and will allow us to know the migrant, to know that person from the standpoint of the essential conditions for their social development. And this means training in Venezuela and in Colombia, their studies, labor possibilities, and this will give us an idea of what we can do to motivate them, and of course the reason why they migrated. This is a huge treasure of information which will help us to guide our public policies. And then we have a biometric registry or recording. And what we do here is we take a kind of photo and look at a footprint of each individual. And this is going to give us a chance to move on to the next phase in red so that we can give them a temporary permit to stay. This is so that they have something, and we can identify them because thousands of people have not had an access, particularly the children, minors. So they have a minimum of a right to have their face recorded on a public document, and that is why we have a temporary pass that represents a document. This is a document which shows the existence of a right for 10 years. The temporary protection that the statute covers is for 10 years, and this is in this document, of which we're very proud, because with this document we've been able to have them in Colombia and give them all of the mechanisms that give them safety so that a person can be represented in a very safe way. Next, now how is the process? What does it look like? Well, we started with 1,890,000 and a little bit more. With this finding, we are going to be moving on to a greater number. We have the Venezuelan population, which has been underestimated, 1,890,000. Now, what about the second part? With an agenda that characterizes things, we have 1,821. We've approved 611 that, as I said, and we have printed up information, 578, where we have the delivery in this process of 358 deliveries of these documents. And right now, we've got a huge delivery taking place in Medellin. Next slide, please. Some of the findings. These are very interesting for this information. First, 70% of the Venezuelan population in Colombia. This is a demographic picture, are of a productive age, and 27% tallies with children, boys and girls and teenagers, and more than 300 and some odd thousand. Only 1% of the population is older than 70 years of age, and many adults who are in perilous conditions. 52% of the population are women. This is good news. They can stabilize migration, and this is really good news. More than 51.2% of the population are located in the urban areas, and this is a challenge for us. They're in Bogota, they're in Medellin, they're in Bogota, which is the capital, they're in Cucuta, they're in Cali, and they're also in Barranquilla. Now, challenges. What is the first one? We have 400,000 children who are, including adolescents, and they are in Colombia. This is about 22% of the total of Venezuelans who are in the country. Now, as far as concerns health, in the last 2 years, we have a bit of a problem, and that is that the first challenge is challenging situations, and this has to do with health, but this is very costly, and that is why we have to do a lot of promotion and deal with health prevention. Now, about 56% of the migrants that are located in Colombia are young people between the ages of 18 and 39 years of age, and as I say, 3% of these migrants are in Colombia, and they're a little bit more than 60 years of age. Next slide. Well, here we've got some information which is very relevant. And the international community has spent about $125 for each Venezuelan refugee. And when we look at migration in Syria, it's not totally financed, but approximately $1,500 has been used for each Syrian refugee. So this means that we have been working in a very disciplined way in fleshing out these strategies so that we can deal with the situation in the international community, as the minister said. Not only does this refer to Colombia, but we're talking about Ecuador, we're talking about Panama, and the entire region that have taken in Venezuelan families. We need greater support because we're using and doing our level best. We have to look at the labor markets and the different markets that take in migrants so that they can be part of these markets. These are the kind of phenomena that we're dealing with on a massive scale. The third thing is that we have fleshed out a conference for donors, and we have to focus our efforts and zoom in on the interoperability of all of this greater outlay so that we can, in point of fact, have this overlap of different sectors. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Now, it's high time to change things. This is the moment. We're talking about opportunities so that people can actually smile in the future, and we've got a lot of different opportunities for international cooperation. When we have Colombians in an adverse situation, we have to take measures, but a lot of this hits on Venezuelans. We have to look at the legality of their status, and the Colombian people have received these groups of people, and we, under the leadership of President Duque as a group, we have looked at transforming opportunities and bring about more smiles on more faces. And in this regard, we are looking at international assistance so that we can look at all of the important areas and we can pull together our joint efforts as we build the country. Not only are we going to help the Venezuelans in Colombia, but everybody else as well. And here, spearheaded by President Duque and supported by the Vice President and the entire government team, is doing this. What we do is to take care of these people and try to offer opportunities, and particularly doing our level best. We know that there are other countries that deal with this, and we feel that we are trying to open up the way for opportunities for adolescents and everybody else. I'm not going to further dwell on this. I'm very happy to be a part of this project and be a part of all of the things that we're doing. Thank you very much.
For your most informative presentation. I am now pleased to offer the floor to Dr. Lucas Gomez, Head of the Office for the Attention and Socioeconomic Integration of the Migrant Population and the Presidency of the Republic of Colombia. You have the floor, Dr. Gomez.
Thank you very much. Por propiciar este espacio para contarle a todo, digamos, este Consejo Permanente de la OEA las grandes acciones que estamos haciendo. Escuchamos ante.
Thank you very much. We are truly appreciative of the opportunity, and we heard our other colleague as well. But let me offer a special greeting to our Secretary General, a dear, longtime friend and ally, Luis Almagro, and our ambassador as well in the OAS. We are very happy to be here to greet all of you, and we'd like to greet all of you here at the OAS. When we were present, when we went to Washington and some of the virtual meetings as well, we have been able to feel everything that Colombia is doing. I'm going to ask you now to pull up the presentation. We'd like to share everything that we're doing. Next slide, please. And this is really something that's very important. We've got a team, and it's a government team put together by the President of the Republic and our minister, where all of us have been involved, and I think it's really very important. Many countries that are here represented in the OAS. It is very important when we talk about migration, because migration is not just a question of regularizing things. We have a permanent ongoing commitment for full-fledged socioeconomic integration of the migrant population based on the temporary protection statute. And so this has been one of the biggest challenges for us. It's not just handing over documents. We have to move ahead. We have to make progress with the plan. And this could be the main blueprint for integration of migrants in the country. Understanding this means that for us, Colombia has not historically received people, but we have been learning along the way. And that means that we've learned that our Venezuelan brothers and sisters who come to our country want to stay, and more than 80% of this population would like to build their life in Colombia. And this is why we have this temporary protection statute. We have seen with it that there is a need to offer this opportunity. And how can we do this? Well, we have an association with the health system. And this is so that when the migrant comes in, there is a process, there's follow-up by the health system. The next thing that we have is access to the educational system. But this is so that in Colombia, boys and girls are covered. And this doesn't have any differentiation when it comes to nationality, but many of the other countries who seek a permanent situation would like to have education and generate employment opportunities. And let's say this is what we really need for integration into our countries. And it's also something very important that we share experiences, we share everything, and want to share with the members of the OAS what we're doing with these migrants. Now, for us, we have another aspect, and this is the interoperability. As of August 2022, we would like to move ahead. But let me avail myself of this opportunity to tell you that we have built, under the aegis of the President of the Republic, the socioeconomic integration of the migrant population. And this is for our brothers and sisters of Venezuela so that they can make progress. This is a policy of this state. We have worked on this integration nationally, and we work with all the organizations throughout the country and the other allies as well who are in Colombia, who are working for integration of these migrants and who are looking to open up doors. We have them associated to and part and parcel of the health system. We also are looking at education, as I said to you a few minutes ago. We have students that are registered in basic or fundamental and middle school. Those who have moved ahead, 498,082. Similarly, we're making progress with protecting boys and girls in different programs that we have. We've made progress as well when it comes to integration into social programs. We want our migration and everything we do to be very productive, and that's why we have indicators that will guide us along the way when it comes to these polls. And this is really very important because it shows us, and this is one of the very important points for the president, so that they can join the labor force, and members of the OAS can understand that we're talking about some of the labor formalities that we have dealt with so that we can have them get in our quota-oriented system. On the other hand, we've got access to social protection mechanisms, kind of safety nets, and we do this because this is what connects everything to formalization in the labor market. Next slide, please. At the same time, we do have some challenges. These are some of the ones that we have recognized and we find them to be very important. In other words, there's an institutional aspect in the country, and as a national government, alongside the territorial bodies, we are looking at an institutionality which will lead to a migration integration system. Last year, this was adopted in Colombia, and we understand that Colombia is not only a country where we have Colombians, but we also host and welcome our brothers and sisters from Venezuela. We have set up institutional instruments throughout the entire country, which will allow for people to work and coordination with the other territorial agencies throughout the entire country. But there's also another very important aspect. This institutionality, which has been put together by the presidents, has another aspect, and that is shared responsibility, co-responsibility. And this is something for us that we have to knit together. We have to work on this. And many of the countries that are sitting at the table, we have to look at the best practices. What is the work that's being done to improve the quality of life and to make progress in the socioeconomic integration? We would like to have at least two options. The first is that this is or can be looked at as a problem, but when you have a strong tie to other peoples, and we have a kind of sisterhood with everything that is going on, and we understand some of the needs of our brothers and sisters. And when we can have our Colombians share with all of these people who came in from Venezuela, we understand the moral commitment that we have. And that is why we have to continue to share this so that things can improve. According to the estimates in Colombia, according to the statistics that we have with all of the work that we have done, we've got about 4 million people who are present in our country. But the needs to deal with all of this and to promote what we're doing is about 4.1 million people that we have to look at. And another very important point is to look for volunteers and look for other communities that will take them in. We cannot forget the policies and all of the activities, not only what we're doing for all Venezuelans, but we understand the need to not generate discrimination. We want to include people with affirmative action policies. We don't want to discriminate, and that is why we zoom in on having a larger quantity of people who are included. We have a definancing, as it were, and we have more than 6 million Venezuelans who have fled their country. And so therefore we have to seek better opportunities for families. When you look at the dimension of everything that's taking place and all of the financing that it involves, we really have to seek international cooperation, because we're talking about $3,150 per migrant or $1,390. But when we look at the commitment of these Venezuelans and what we need, it's about $300 per Venezuelan migrant. So this is a very definitive stance that's been taken by President Duque, and throughout Colombia, we have had to open up our arms, even though there may be a ceiling on what we can do, but we're looking at how we can better contribute and how we can really get into the area of shared responsibility, understanding that there are far-reaching needs, but also it's very significant in terms of everything that we're doing and everything that is needed. We wanted to share what we're doing. It's not easy when we do share everything that we're doing. We understand how challenging it is. Colombia has opened its doors, and we want to share with everything that we have, because we truly believe that that is the right way. It is correct to do that. There are a lot of different challenges when it comes to what we're doing. This has been underscored by the president, but we're looking at ways to move ahead together so that this brotherhood, this sisterhood that we have, in keeping with the temporary protection measure that we have in the country, can really move towards sharing things with other countries, and we can share our vision as to the needs that everybody has. We don't really have any other option because there are a lot of socioeconomic needs, but we're looking for an opportunity to pull everybody in. And with this mandate that we have, which is a moral one, we want to ensure that the Venezuelans who are in our country will be sitting pretty with themselves and their families. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to share all of this with you. And once again, we are here just to share Colombia's experience and talk with other countries and make progress in terms of what we're doing and in terms of how can improve the quality of life of the Venezuelans that are within our borders. Thank you very much.
Informative presentation. Now, prior to offering the floor to delegations, I would like to welcome Ambassador Luis Valles, Vice Minister of Human Mobility at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ecuador, to the Permanent Council. Ambassador Valles, the floor is yours, sir.
Ambassador, if you can ask for the floor, please. Thank you. We can hear you, but we don't see you.
Mucho gusto verle, señor secretario general.
It's a pleasure to see you, Secretary General, Vice President and Foreign Minister of Colombia, distinguished permanent representatives, and delegates at this meeting of the Permanent Council of the OAS. Ecuador has traditionally been characterized as by being a country with well-known policies in the region in terms of providing international protection. We are the country of the region that has received the largest number of requests for refugee status. We now have approximately 70,000 refugees in our country. 91% of the 71,000 are Colombian brothers and sisters. Now, in terms of regularization of status, I'd like to mention that in 2019, Ecuador already had an initial process of regularization, and we are just about to begin a second process in which we hope to regularize some 450,000 Venezuelan citizens. I would like to mention that in Ecuador, as in Colombia, for example, we already have a group of Venezuelan citizens and brothers and sisters who have regular status. We calculate, and these are calculations been done with IOM and UNHCR, that many hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans are intending to remain in Ecuador. We are a population of 17 million, and this population is a bit more than 3%, which is similar, the percentage is similar as in our neighboring countries of Colombia and Peru. I'd also like to mention that approximately 250,000 Venezuelan citizens transit through our country. They enter and they leave, mainly entering at the north border and exiting at the southern border. But we have also seen and experienced a reflux of Venezuelan citizens who are moving from south to north. As regards the process of regularization or obtaining regular status, which is about to begin in Ecuador, we see that while it's very important, and it was also mentioned in the earlier presentations, regularization or regular status is not the end, rather it is a tool, it's a mechanism towards an end, which is insertion, inclusion, integration in a socioeconomic sense of the Venezuelans. We have not yet begun a major process of such insertion, which we are going to undergo in coming months. But I would like to note that Ecuador is making major efforts to assure the insertion and inclusion of our Venezuelan brothers and sisters. And so, for example, healthcare services, 400,000 medical appointments have been given to Venezuelan citizens. In education, 47,000 children and young people are in the universal education system of Ecuador. And as regards vaccination, dosages have been administered to 370,000 Venezuelans in a percentage similar to vaccination of the local population, percentage-wise. We calculate that we invest about 80 million annually in supporting and assisting the Venezuelan community. Now, I should note, Chairman, and what I mentioned just a moment ago, what is so important is insertion. We calculate that if we do the work well, and our commitment is to do so in respect of socioeconomic inclusion, from 1.7 to 1.9% of the GDP will that is what the labor insertion of Venezuelan citizens will translate into. And we are aware that 52% of the Venezuelan population that is economically active in Ecuador has a university degree, which is very important for that whole process of socioeconomic insertion. But Mr. Chairman, I would also like to highlight issues regarding cooperation. Ecuador last year had mentioned that we need about 236 million, we estimate, for the work of conferring regular status and ensuring socioeconomic inclusion. Now, Ecuador received 68 million, which is just 28% of the total required. And we must say so, and I apologize for pressuring, but what we must say as Ecuador is that this is a very low figure compared to even the regional average and what other countries of the region also receive. We have mentioned this to the community of donors. We have mentioned it to the donor countries and also to the international financial institutions. And of course, they have understood. And so we are working with the World Bank, with the Global Mechanism for Concessional Financing to present projects for socioeconomic insertion. Now, in this regard, I would especially like to thank Canada and the United States and the delegates and permanent representatives present here for the effort that those countries make when it comes to cooperation with Ecuador for this process of ensuring regular status and socioeconomic insertion. Finally, Mr. Chairman, Ecuador would like to renew its efforts and its commitment to work internally in the country and likewise with the international community in this process of ensuring that regular status is conferred upon migrants and socioeconomic inclusion. Socioeconomic inclusion will result not just from the efforts of Ecuador, but from those of the international community as a whole. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, I'd like to thank you, Ambassador Baez, for your comments. I think now that we'd like to open the floor to the delegations of the member states. But I would like to remind you, of course, it's very important that we try to limit our comments to say less than 5 minutes, given that we have a very lengthy agenda today. And we'd like to afford some opportunity for the Colombian distinguished presenters to offer any comments that they may have following your issues that you might raise. So the floor is now open to the member states. It appears that we have first the Ambassador Forsyth. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to be very brief. Once again, I would like to say that for me, it is an honor to share this meeting of the Permanent Council with a dear friend, the Vice President and Foreign Minister of Colombia. It's a pleasure to see you once again, Marta Lucia. It's a great pleasure. Now, you have said, Mr. Chairman, that the statement by the Vice President has been comprehensive, and indeed that is so. In a reduced time, in a limited time, she's been able to give us a global overview, an extremely interesting one, of the challenges that the sister Republic of Colombia has faced when it comes to addressing this wave of immigrants, which is not only unprecedented in Latin America, but really in the Americas, generally speaking, and as she has said, perhaps internationally. Now, in the case of Peru, we have about 1.5 million Venezuelan citizens. And we like the very constructive way in which the Vice President and Foreign Minister have referred to the Venezuelan migrants, children of the homeland of Bolivar, and that we all need to give them human, decent, dignified treatment. Now, Peru, we are the second country, only Colombia is ahead of us in terms of the presence of a massive number of refugees. And we are the first country, the leading country in the region when it comes to requests for applications for refugee status, which has required that the government of Peru define new migration conditions so as to facilitate and legalize the presence of these persons in Peru. We cannot deny the huge economic, social, and political impact of the massive presence of this wave of immigration, which had never been seen before, had never been imagined before, but nor at the same time, we must recognize the international support, the support of the international community. Now, this support clearly has not been sufficient. There's still major expectations on the part of our countries when it comes to mobilizing the consciousness of, or the conscience rather, of international society. We face any number of challenges, and as the distinguished Vice President said, it's not just the question of Venezuela. There's also the situation of Haiti. There's a massive presence of Haitians in several countries, specifically in Chile and to a lesser extent in Peru, and the potential presence of other migrants, which some of us might have some intuition of. Now, the Vice President and Foreign Minister described the massive nature of this, or the very significant nature of this migration in relation to democracy and, well, one should add, human rights. And so I'm honored to say that Peru, through the alternate representative, Ana Gabriela Vasquez, has become chair of the Committee on Migration Affairs of the OAS, which will soon be holding its first meeting. We hope that this Foreign Service officer from Peru will take these challenges very seriously and that these will have a major echo in our organization. I also greet the distinguished authorities of Colombia who gave us an excellent presentation of the gains that have been made in the sister country in an area that is so important for all of our countries. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we have the ambassador, the representative for Venezuela. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Chairman, the Venezuelan migration crisis has no precedence globally. Never has there been a situation caused by a government in time of peace that never has it led to such large-scale displacement in such a short time. In 6 years, we have overtaken the crisis of the civil war in Syria, and it's estimated that the number of Venezuelan migrants, people who have left Venezuela, will exceed those who've left Syria. Those who've left have left behind a country that has been kidnapped by a dictatorship, where only the wealthiest and the well-connected can live in a satisfactory manner. Millions of Venezuelans have emigrated, leaving or traveling thousands of kilometers with children in their arms in many cases to reach countries where they hope to prosper with dignity and liberty and under the rule of law and democratic institutions. This has overtaken or overwhelmed the countries of the Americas who weren't ready to or prepared to receive so many people in such a short time, a situation which has only been aggravated in times of pandemic. Despite these difficulties, we should highlight the generosity and the warmth with which the governments have received our people. With very few exceptions, we have there have been just a few cases of mistreatment or xenophobia, which we've denounced. Most of the receiving countries have devised innovative migration policies so as to not only receive our migrants, but also to take advantage of the potential for immigration to strengthen their economies. One should make special note of the case of Colombia and the temporary protected status that has been conferred on migrants, which has been described in such a brilliant manner by the Vice President and Foreign Minister of Colombia, Marta Lucía Ramirez, and the high-level officials who are with her at this meeting. We our greatest gratitude to the government, people and government of Colombia for the treatment that has been accorded to so many millions of Venezuelans, as well as our proposal for designing and carrying out regional policy measures to address the problem. As was said, other countries have also experienced what Colombia has experienced. Ambassador Luis Valles has described the situation in Ecuador and the support that is received by more than 500,000 Venezuelans there. Ambassador Forsyth discussed the situation in Peru, and I could go on and on. Now, while in economic terms, it has been shown that the benefits of migration justify the policies of giving regular status to Venezuelan migration, a humanitarian perspective is put forth as a moral imperative, not only regular status, but also protection to reach the receiving country. And that is why we issue an appeal to the member states of this organization to develop and strengthen their policies to protect persons in mobility. Mr. Chairman, if there's something that has been clear, it is that so long as the dictatorship continues to usurp power in Venezuela, there will be no pandemic or river or mountain that or arms that would stand in the way of Venezuelans' desire to seek out a better life beyond our borders. Each new obstruction makes the trip more dangerous, so we must work to end the usurpation of power in Venezuela. And so long as that, until that happens, we need to find ways of regularizing migration status beneficial both to the Venezuelan migrants and the receiving countries, as has been described so well by the high-level officials of Colombia and Ecuador who have spoken. To conclude, Mr. Chairman, we must reiterate the human dimension of the tragedy as noted by the Vice President of Colombia. To emphasize a single case, 3 Venezuelan children recently died in the process undertaken by their parents to seek out a better future. A 7-year-old girl died in the Rio Grande River. A child died of cold in trying to cross the Atacama Desert. And a few days ago, a shot in her arms was a 7-month-old baby who was traveling in an embarkation seeking to reach Trinidad and Tobago. In these circumstances, in this case, the circumstances that led the Coast Guard of Trinidad and Tobago to shoot against the vessel has not been cleared up, nor the justification for the use of force. We have asked that an investigation be undertaken, and we have sought information about the health condition of the child's mother and ensuring that she gets appropriate medical care and respect for her rights. We conclude, Mr. Chairman, reiterating our gratitude to the government of Colombia for having raised this issue in the Permanent Council and for the important contributions that it has made in seeking solutions to this crisis that we're all experiencing. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we have the floor available for Trinidad and Tobago. You have the floor, sir.
Chair, the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago begins by expressing our appreciation to you for including this very important topic on today's order of business. The delegation thanks the delegation of Colombia for having offered this opportunity to the Permanent Council to be updated on the progress made by Colombia in implementing its temporary protection statute for Venezuelan migrants as outlined in the concept notes circulated by the Permanent Mission. Delegation of Trinidad and Tobago is also grateful for the presentations delivered by the Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Colombia, Her Excellency Marta Lucía Ramirez, by Dr. Juan Francisco Espinosa, and also by Dr. Lucas Gomez. Based on our own strong, friendly, and cooperative bilateral relations with Colombia, our shared experiences, and our mutual commitment to safeguarding the human rights and humanitarian needs of Venezuelan nationals, during the past year, Trinidad and Tobago has increased cooperation between the Embassy of Colombia in Port-of-Spain and our Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. This increased cooperation with Colombia has in fact included a virtual seminar entitled Colombian Policy in Response to Venezuelan Migration, held on September 17 and 20, 2021, and consistent with our integrated whole of government approach in Trinidad and Tobago to managing Venezuelan migrants. This opportunity for sharing experiences was well attended by officials from our Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development, Ministry of National Security, and Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. It should be noted that this seminar was first conceptualized, in fact, during a meeting held on January 19, 2021, between Senator the Honorable Dr. Amory Brown, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs of Trinidad and Tobago, and Her Excellency Marta Cecilia Pinilla Perdomo, Ambassador of Colombia to Trinidad and Tobago. Specifically, the purpose of that seminar was to share the public policy measures adopted by the government of Colombia in a number of areas related to the management of Venezuelan migration. In general, in addressing non-national migration, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, on its own part, is guided by its immigration laws, public health ordinances, and more recently, the COVID-19 health regulations. Persons who seek to enter Trinidad and Tobago illegally are subject to the Immigration Act 1801 of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, which includes detention and deportation. With respect to its policy towards Venezuelan migrants, the government of Trinidad and Tobago took the decision in May 2019 to register Venezuelan nationals under a Migrant Registration Framework, or MRF. This applied to those who had entered the country legally, as well as those who had entered illegally. A total of 16,523 Venezuelan migrants were formally registered under the MRF. These persons received a registration card and were legally permitted to take up employment in accordance with the laws of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The MRF is a migration management tool meant to safeguard the human rights and humanitarian needs of Venezuelan nationals while demonstrating the government of Trinidad and Tobago's commitment for peace and security as a whole. Under the MRF, registered Venezuelan nationals are subject to and protected by the material laws of Trinidad and Tobago. This registration process afforded the approved Venezuelan nationals the opportunity to be self-funded during their stay in Trinidad and Tobago. In August 2020, the government of Trinidad and Tobago granted an initial extension until December 2020 to those registered under the MRF whose return had been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic and related closure of our borders. In March 2021, a re-registration process was opened, which would allow such persons to continue to work legally in the country for a 6-month period. 13,800 re-registered. In September 2021, an extension was granted until December 2021. It may be noted that the UN High Commission for Refugees data indicates that there are now more than 25,000 Venezuelans in Trinidad and Tobago. Given our small size and limited resources, Chair, Excellencies, Trinidad and Tobago cannot sustain a large number of Venezuelan migrants. In this regard, the attempt of some migrants legally registered under the MRF to illegally bring their relatives to join them in Trinidad and Tobago is cause for concern. The involvement of criminal elements, human traffickers, and others linked to organized crime in the illegal movement of people from Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago continues to be a serious national security concern. The application and implementation of the laws of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago are important to protect the citizens of our country and persons with legal status, particularly in light of the current COVID-19 pandemic. In this regard, following the MRF process, an amendment was made to the second schedule of the Immigration Act, requiring citizens and nationals of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to obtain a visa for entry into Trinidad and Tobago effective June 2019. Venezuelan migrants in Trinidad and Tobago have access to basic health care through our public health care system, including COVID-19 vaccinations. Venezuelan migrant children have access to public education. It should also be noted that the Venezuelan embassy in Port of Spain has in fact undertaken several voluntary repatriation exercises of Venezuelan nationals beginning in July 2021. And our Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, Ministry of Health and Immigration Division provide assistance to ensure a smooth flow of those persons. Chair, Your Excellency, Vice President Ramirez, distinguished presenters, Excellencies and colleagues, as good neighbors, the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago are deeply committed to and concerned for safeguarding the human rights and meeting the humanitarian needs of our Venezuelan neighbors. All of Trinidad and Tobago is deeply saddened whenever our Venezuelan neighbors, in the words of our Honorable Prime Minister, risk their lives and the lives of others in illicit and dangerous border crossings. This sentiment was most recently expressed by our Prime Minister himself ahead of the now ongoing investigation into the unfortunate and tragic loss of life of the baby Yaelvis Sarabia Santoyo, and for which I reiterate our expression of deepest condolences, which Prime Minister Rowley himself expressed on his own behalf and on behalf of all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago therefore acknowledges the importance of this process of cooperation called for by the delegation of Colombia, government and delegation of Colombia, in addressing Venezuelan migration in the hemisphere. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Next, we have the Ambassador for Mexico. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We take note of the presentations by the Vice President, the other officials of the Government of Colombia, the Foreign Minister of Ecuador, regarding the international efforts to deal with migration. The issue should always be dealt with from the standpoint of shared responsibility. We take note of the contribution of Venezuelan migration to Colombia, and we're grateful for the information on the efforts that have been made. Mexico as country of origin, transition, reception and return of migrants, we recognize the benefits of migration to the receiving countries, as well as development policies that make immigration an option and not an obligation by effective means, so that it can be pursued in an orderly, regulated, and safe manner in keeping with the Global Pact on Migration, and likewise attention for those seeking international protection in compliance with the relevant international standards, in particular the Global Pact on Refugees. It is good to continue sharing the forums for dialogue and cooperation in the hemisphere in terms of consideration of immigration or migration issues in the OAS, other international forums for immigration or for addressing migration issues. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Ambassador. Next, we have Ambassador Abdallah. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to congratulate Marta Lucia Ramirez for the presentation that she has made, and then the remarks by Luis Valles, very frankly addressing Venezuelan migration of the region. We are very much impacted this is a problem that is incremental in nature. We are all aware that this dramatic, tragic, and sad moment in the history of Venezuela not only does not cease to bleed the country, but the migration flow continues and will continue. It's all the more dramatic when one looks at the broken down figures on age brackets, gender breakdown, and I am fully aware that it is a country where the oldest persons have no option of fleeing. They're trapped. Those over 70 have no chance of escaping the tragedy. The Colombian temporary protection statute is truly an example. You do very well, Marta, to note this as a regional reference, but international in nature. It's an instrument that has been useful for validating the existence of human beings, that had been evicted by their own country of origin. So I think the efforts that you've carried out in this regard have been titanic. I also believe that on these issues, there are no good bilateral solutions as between countries. When countries seek a bilateral solution, what they're really doing is like putting a patch on the problem. They're trying to, say, mend the problem, but the big hemisphere-wide problem continues. As children of immigrants, this huge continent of immigrants, well, we know that it is the mix, but an articulated, intelligent, and measured mix, is what has made our peoples what we are, not anything where we would not end up respecting and recognizing ourselves. When a Venezuelan comes to our land, they must have the same rights, the same opportunities. And there is an effort to set aside any xenophobic attitudes, which it has been said it's limited in scope, but it's always there looming. It's what's a little bit today could grow very much. So it's very important to pay a lot of attention to that. And I am one of those who believes that at the end of the day, what we do when we take on this issue with this sequence on this point, once the migration has consummated, and we have to deploy all of these tools, seek for subsidy, for grants, seek support in the international community, raise our voice, and say what we're pointing out in terms of asymmetries. Why Venezuelans $150 and others who face similar tragedies around the world might have $1,000 or more, but we also need to look at what is generating this metastasis, this cancer, the dictatorship as a hemisphere. We need to take on that what is happening in Venezuela is a breakdown of the rule of law, an exercise of autocratic government, and that if we don't all work in a like-minded manner from south to north, north to south, all together, so that at some point in time, that bitter situation might disappear. Then, as I said at the outset of my remarks, it'll be more and more incremental. Until this happens, it'll be greater and greater outflow of migrants. So on the one hand, what has been said by the authorities who are here, let us work on developing and having standardization among of these sorts of tools, but at the same time, let us wage the battle for democracy, liberty, and respect for human rights in Venezuela. Both actions are absolutely essential, and that is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Very much, Ambassador Abdallah. Next, we have the Ambassador for Guatemala. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I make comments on this very important point that we have at our meeting, I would like to seize the opportunity to offer thanks and our solidarity from Guatemala for everything that took place this Wednesday in Guatemala. According to the latest information, we have found 2 that have passed away, and there are material damages for the roads and the other buildings. That's the situation in Guatemala. We continue to update our data and an analysis of what is going on, particularly looking at the humanitarian aid that we can have for the families that have been affected. Mr. Chairman, Guatemala values and truly appreciates the presentations and the excellent comments by Vice Presidents of the Republic of Colombia, by Juan Francisco Espinosa, Director of Immigration in Colombia, and also the presentation that we heard from Lucas Gomez from the Office of Socioeconomic Integration of the Migrant Population under the cabinet, the President's cabinet in Colombia. We would like to thank Ecuador and others who are here. The government of Colombia took a decision about a year ago to offer this temporary protection status, and Guatemala is in spirit, hand in hand with our Colombian brothers who have done their level best and made efforts to receive these migratory flows, and has a migratory policy and open doors to take in, host, and welcome these populations. We truly appreciate that today the topics that are before this council have disseminated the information and have opened up a dialogue that is amongst states and which are sharing their experiences. All of the data shared today from Colombia points to 8,830,000 some odd who have temporary protection. 666 Venezuelan citizens and 2,000 some odd that have been approved as well under the temporary protection statute. We hope that we have 1.8 million cards that can be delivered as of 7th of August this year, and that there will be peace in this Venezuelan migration population. Guatemala would like to openly recognize the right to Venezuelans to have a regular, peaceful situation, and this temporary protective is one more step which will allow the beneficiaries not only to be in a safe situation, but also will give them a chance to have opportunities and have access to health care as well as education, access to work as well as other benefits. These things have been established nationally, and we are very much in favor of having a normative and some guidance, and we are wedded to human rights of the migrants and their families. And in this regard, the quest for opportunities to generate opportunities is the right and crucial, and as such then it's crucial to recognize the very important link between migration and development. It's crucial to work together in a coordinated way with all the countries in the hemisphere. And in this regard, Guatemala would like to improve its system and work hand in hand with the United Nations for these issues. This work is being done in communities, and we should also like to offer basic care so that they have a future life. My country and the pro temp president for protection is doing technical work with the UNHCRs and offers financial and technical assistance to states so as to build national systems and asylum and to establish mechanisms that are appropriate in transit countries, improve conditions in the countries of origin so that there is a safe return. And as such, then, let me seize the opportunity to underscore that recently there have been some new installations for the Department of recognizing these statutes, the RRR, paying attention, very specific attention to all people that have needs. Thus, Mr. Chairman, today, Colombia has shown that regularization of migrants has a lot of benefits, both for the migrants themselves as well as for the host country. Guatemala values what the Colombian authorities is doing and everything for the benefit of Venezuelans, and thanks this country for sharing the best practices in this council on a topic of utmost importance for all of us, and particularly because we are a country of transit and destinations. There is no shadow of a doubt, Mr. Chairman, that the sense of urgency that member states of this organization feel means that we're called on to build our commitment and uphold human rights for all of the refugees in this region, and to not discriminate, to fight against xenophobia and discrimination of this very vulnerable population, as well as to seek a good socioeconomic situation based on shared knowledge, as has been offered today. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
We next turn to Ambassador Charles from Haiti. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first and foremost, we'd like to offer our solidarity to the people of Guatemala who suffered this earthquake this morning. I would like to avail myself of the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to thank the members of the Colombian delegation, the Vice President, for offering us all of the information and the bird's eye view of the situation there. And I hope that Colombia in the region will continue to deal with the situation. We know that the problem is one that has to be looked at, and a lot of people are involved. We understand that we need to have long-lasting solutions for this humanitarian situation. When we work together and share, we will be able to work well with the situation. Many of our citizens in the region are being looked at. There's poverty exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Little by little, we are looking to deal with the situation, and we will continue to work and understand the precariousness with which we have to deal. My delegation is wedded to seeing this with humanity. We have to have a full picture of what is going on and work with the entire international community. Thank you very much.
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much.
And officials of both Colombia and Ecuador for their important update today. Canada recognizes the significant impacts and challenges resulting from the 5 million Venezuelan refugees and migrants across the Latin American Caribbean region, well over half of which have found themselves or are found in Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. We commend Colombia's leadership on the response to this unprecedented situation. The Colombian government's decision to provide temporary protection status to Venezuelans in Colombia is an example for our hemisphere and for the world. Canada is committed to continuing to support the response to the regional Venezuelan refugee and migrant situation, including through the group of Friends of the Quito Process Donors Group. Comme nous l'avons déjà souligné devant ce Conseil, le Canada était heureux.
We have seen Canada attended the International Donors Conference, and we have continued to offer our services with 35 million, as was expressed at the time of the conference. We also find it very important to continue multilateral work to uphold and pay attention to the economic situation of refugees. We have to offer protection and do our level best. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the representative for Paraguay. You have the floor, sir.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Madam Vice President, we'd like to thank all of you for including this topic on the agenda, having heard the progress made with the implementation of the temporary protection statute for the protection of Venezuelans. We have heard some very definitive numbers. I think it's important to reiterate that there have been more than 6 million Venezuelans that have gone to other countries seeking better horizons. We understand that the migration into these countries is increasing. As they seek democratic places. We understand that there are requests for the Colombians, as was mentioned by the Vice President. We truly appreciate the comments made by Ecuador, and let us assure for all of you that we truly value the work that you're doing for people who need protection. And we'd like to appeal to all stakeholders involved and who work in these areas to promote human rights for for people who are in vulnerable situations with the hope that these issues can be ironed out. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, next, the representative for the USA. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to take the opportunity first to commend Colombia on their temporary protection statute for Venezuelan migrants program. We know Colombia has welcomed nearly 2 million of the more than 6 million Venezuelan migrants and refugees who have fled their country since the humanitarian crisis began in 2015. We support Colombia and other countries throughout the hemisphere who welcome these displaced persons. We believe these efforts to support social integration of Venezuelans reduces tensions throughout the region while also reducing migrants' vulnerability to trafficking and exploitation. As the top government donor to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the United States actively supports efforts to protect and assist Venezuelan migrants and refugees and the communities that host them throughout the hemisphere. We value the contributions that many member states and permanent observers provide to UNHCR, particularly in support of displaced Venezuelans. The Maduro regime's economic mismanagement and political repression are the fundamental causes of this humanitarian crisis. Venezuelans are fleeing their country to escape crippling poverty, unyielding corruption, and the lack of fundamental political and civil rights. As partners in this hemisphere, we are called upon to provide assistance and to show compassion to alleviate Venezuelans' suffering while simultaneously addressing the root cause of the crisis. We must support the Venezuelan people's efforts for the peaceful restoration of democracy through free and fair elections, achieved through a Venezuelan-led negotiated process. We call on the Venezuelan parties to resume the dialogue process in good faith as soon as possible. In closing, I reiterate my praise for the Colombian government and all those supporting Venezuelan migrants and refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We next turn our attention to Brazil. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. This is my first time, and I'd like to welcome everybody. And we would like to thank you for putting this points. But first, let me congratulate the delegation of Colombia, the Vice President, Marta Lucet Ramirez, for her excellent presentation. The government of Brazil has accompanied what the government is doing for the last 2 years, and we have also looked after measures from the Palacio do Planalto, and now we're looking at other things, but this is my first set of comments in the OAS precisely on migration of Venezuelans, and what the Brazilians have done in terms of their own welcoming. But I would also like to mention this temporary protection measure as a humanitarian gest. It is one of the most important in the history of our hemisphere. We would like to warmly applaud you there, and you have our support. 1.8 million Venezuelan citizens are throughout the Americas, and they have found a place in solidarity with others. The migrants and refugees have been welcomed, it's made a big impact in terms of a qualitative evaluation by Colombia, I should say. As we heard in the PowerPoint presentations, was very impressive, not only just to give us the numbers and the tallies, but also to understand the humanitarian efforts that have been made. The Brazilian government will receive that presentation, and we have an approach which values quality. Today, we house more than 300,000 Venezuelan migrants. We understand this is because of our geographic proximity, and the Palacio de Planalto is making its efforts to receive these Venezuelans. Everybody that comes into Brazil has to be looked at. I think it's really very important that they come in and they're occupying a large area in Brazil, and the mayors, the other councils in Brazil have got together, they have pulled their efforts together, and they are working on the border cities. Near Roraima, for example, there's a lot of coordination between the state, federal, and other levels of government in Brazil when it comes to the administration of all of this. And we think that Venezuelan citizens who are in Brazil should have the same conditions that Brazilian citizens have. And as far as Mercosur is concerned, these are the efforts that have been made in these countries. So our strategy in Brazil is based on shelter, social services, and other areas. More than 6 million Venezuelans have left. 180,000 are now Brazilians. And this number, 76,000 Venezuelans, have been looked at for Brazil. This is very significant in terms of what this means for people coming into our country. We offer public services, national migration services, as well as health care. The federal government has looked at the situation and the situation where there's so much need. We have offered vaccines, a large number of vaccines, and 357 CPFs. This is a registry. It's a kind of identification card that we have offered. This guarantees access to the labor market. 70,000 now have access to the labor market. We have other measures for the migratory situation, and also in the light of the pandemic, during some of these exceptions that we have offered, we have looked at the health situation, and we've offered this, as we do for the population in general, to those who have come in to Brazil. We are the pro temp president right now of an organization that deals with this, and we would like to offer greater protection to migrants and Venezuelan refugees. We want to have and show our solidarity with all of South America. The Brazilian pro temp presidency will organize a special event for these issues, and we will underscore practices to deal with the situation. President Brazil, or I should like to underscore, that is to say, the importance of the host countries and the importance of supporting migrants, as well as for those countries that receive them. Those are my comments for the moment, and for the next point, we'll have an opportunity to speak a little bit more. Thank you very much. Warm greetings to everybody.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Secretario.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Greetings, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General. I truly appreciate seeing this item on the meeting this afternoon of the Permanent Council. It's an opportunity to actually deal with the topic of migration, Venezuelan migration, and to look at some of the responses. The migratory Venezuelan wave has to do with people who had to flee their country. It has had a tremendous impact in the hemisphere. Colombia, in particular, has been one of the main host countries for Venezuelan migrants. They've had to deal with this migratory crisis and have put together the temporary protection statute for Venezuelans. With this initiative, we have worked with Colombians and dealt with this migratory situation. We have promoted a warm welcome and integration of the immigrants into the society. This is an example for the region and for all countries in the international arena. We have to look at different welcoming strategies. The Episcopal Conference in Colombia, with other pastoral offices, have looked at the statute, and this is a fraternal move so that there are guarantees for these people and so that they can enjoy human rights for all people and so that they have an opportunity for a dignified life. Colombia is one of the countries which has come up with a response across the board and has offered different possibilities. Those who are the weakest need public policies based on human rights. The Holy See and the Pope deemed that for a country to grapple with the situation, it cannot be done in a siloed way. There has to be the commitment of the international community, and therefore the phenomenon of migration calls for a commitment from the international community to have a legal framework that would allow migrants to be protected, to be integrated, and to be sheltered. There has to be efforts to ensure peace, fraternity by all. Mr. Chairman, the Holy See truly values everything that is being done for migrants, and we feel it's necessary and just for all of us to increasingly work together. This requires strengthening solidarity and brotherly love in our society as a guiding light for this kind of situation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Turn our attention now to Secretary General Almagro, who may have some closing thoughts. Please do, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The Venezuelan exodus has exceeded 6 million people. We're talking about a country outside of a country. It's not just a metaphor because it represents 20% of the total population of Venezuela. It is the biggest refugee crisis in the Western Hemisphere in history and the second leading one in world history with no war catastrophe. Only Syria would have a larger number with 6.7 million people outside of the country after a decade of civil war. This situation will continue into 2002. Well, we might see this year, the figure might reach 7 million, the largest in the world. Only people are fleeing not only are people leaving Venezuela, but they're very vulnerable situations. 3.7 million suffer from food insecurity, the largest population in the Western Hemisphere in this condition, and the fourth largest such population in the world. Vulnerable persons, while there are many pregnant women who are fleeing Venezuela due to the collapse of public health. 80% of women giving birth in Cucuta are Venezuelan. And Venezuelans emigrate because of factors that feed into one another, a complex humanitarian emergency, malnutrition, diseases, violations of human rights, extended criminal violence in the city's collapse of public service, the most pronounced economic contraction worldwide, a poverty rate which is now over 90% of the population, and the direct responsibilities of the dictatorship for human rights violations. It's a very difficult time, obviously, for Venezuelans. We must say it's one of the countries that has made a major effort has been Colombia in absolute terms and in absolute numbers. It is over 1.8 million Venezuelans in Colombia, almost 1/3 of all of Venezuelan immigration. The government of Colombia adopted the temporary protection statute in order to regularize the situation of Venezuelans. This was introduced by President Duque in February 2021. It allows 10 years and allows for those covered to seek permanent residence, social services, education, employment on a footing equal with Colombian citizens. That policy is a humanitarian gesture, and so it is a progressive act. It is aimed at restoring violated rights and opportunities, and it helps to build citizenship. Solidarity is also an effective and sensible public policy. It has been, we've seen immigration become part of the workforce and help spur on the economy, giving them regular status makes it possible to expand the tax base by these economic inclusion aspects. We have heard the gains in Colombia. They issued over 500,000 permits and 250,000 other benefits. We must recognize the benefits and the vision of this government in respect of refugees and migrants. The temporary protection statute is historical. We hope that this will expand and that efforts can be redoubled so that Venezuela can see that the Americas are an example in this regard. Thank you, Chairman.
Very much, Secretary General Almagro. We have one final commenter, that is Ambassador Ordonez, who would offer presumably some summary remarks with respect to the proceedings for today. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, the apologies from the Madam Vice President, who was connected until just a few moments ago, but she had to leave the session in order to preside over the Conference of Justice of Ministers of the Ibero-American countries, who are marking their 50th anniversary. And as Vice President, she is hosting the meeting in the city of Barranquilla. I must also thank all of the countries for their statements, for their recognition of the gains that have been made by Colombia implementing the temporary protection statute for Venezuelan migrants. Likewise, our gratitude for all of the information that and support that we have received regarding the different initiatives that are taken in your countries to protect the rights of migrants. That is all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. If there are no other delegations wishing to make interventions, and having heard of the very informative presentations and the comments on the issue, I wish to propose that the Permanent Council take note of the presentations made by the Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Colombia, Director Migración of Colombia, and the head of the Office for the Attention and Socioeconomic Integration of the Migrant Population, Presidency of the Republic of Colombia, as well as those of the delegations who may have presented, including, of course, the Secretary General. There being no further objections, it is so agreed. I now extend a cordial invitation and welcome to the permanent representative of Brazil, Ambassador Otávio Brandelli, who presented his credentials to the General Secretary yesterday, February 15th. Ambassador Brandelli holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Pontifical Catholic University of Rio Grande, with a specialization in administration for the Federal University Rio Grande do Sul. He undertook postgraduate studies in commercial law, fiscal law, and tax law at the Superior School of Legal Practice in Rio Grande and in public and private international law at the Hague Academy of International Law in the Netherlands. Ambassador Brandelli joined the diplomatic service in 1991, specializing from the onset in intellectual property, international trade, science and technology, and regional integration. He served with the Brazilian mission to the European communities in Brussels in 1996 to 2000, and on 2 occasions with the Brazilian permanent delegation to Aladi and Mercosur in Montevideo in the years 2000 to 2004 and 2008 to 2013. In Brazil, he headed the Intellectual Property Division at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 2004 to 2008, and was a member of the interministerial committees in charge of drafting and monitoring the progress of legislative bills on industry property, the protection of plant cultivars and varieties, copyright, computer programs, and integrated circuit design. During this period, he was a member of the Committee for the Digital TV Transition of the Interministerial Group for Intellectual Property and of the National Council for Combating Piracy and Intellectual Property Crimes. He served as the president of the National Industrial Property Institute of Rio de Janeiro in 2013 to 2015, and upon his return to the Foreign Ministry, he was appointed director of the Mercosur Department in 2015 to 2018. In that position, he served as the national coordinator of the Mercosur Common Market Group and a national coordinator of the Political Consultation and Consultation Forum between the members of Mercosur and its associated states. He was also the national coordinator of the Mercosur Institutional Analysis Group. As Secretary General of Foreign Affairs in 2019 to 2021, Ambassador Brandelli served as a Foreign Ministry representative on the Board of Directors of Itaipu. He was also the Executive Secretary of the Brazilian section of the Sino-Brazilian High-Level Commission for Coordination and Cooperation and of the Brazilian-Russian High-Level Commission for Cooperation. He has received the following honors: Order of Rio Grande or Rio Grande, Grand Cross, Santos Dumont Medal of Merit, Order of Defense Merit Grand Officer, Order of Naval Merit Grand Officer, Peacemaker and Medal Order of Aeronautical Merit at the Grand Officer level, a Friend of the Naval Medal National Order of Merit, Grand Cross of Paraguay, Victory Medal Moir Medal of Merit, and Tamandere Medal of Merit. I now give the floor to Ambassador Brandelli, Permanent Representative of Brazil to the Organization of American States. Ambassador, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Iverson Hall, Secretary General Luis Almagro, Assistant Secretary General Nestor Mendez, distinguished permanent and alternate representatives, ladies and gentlemen. I'm grateful to the warm reception that I am getting here at the Organization of American States and in the city of Washington since I arrived in the country last week. I make special mention of the deference and respect and kindness that I have received from all of you during the session for presentation of credentials at the OAS headquarters. I now have the honor to call all of you colleagues. I thank you, and also Secretary General Luis Almagro, who I met during my long stay in Montevideo on 2 different occasions, 10 years in all, on having opened up his office to an informal conversation in which he was informally able to give me a great deal of orientation. On addressing this council for the first time as permanent representative, I would like to express a few words of gratitude. First, I thank the President of the Republic of Brazil and the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, as well as the Secretary General of Foreign Affairs, for my designation to this important position, one of the highest and held in highest consideration by everyone in the Brazilian Foreign Service. I am also grateful to the team of the Brazilian delegation in Washington for all of the preparatory work that they have done prior to my arrival here in the city. And I would also like to thank the 52 authorities of the Brazilian government who I visited before coming to Washington so as to better understand and get to know better just what are the opportunities and challenges that we have ahead of us on the different issues. In the case of Brazil, we can say that our relationship with our neighbors and integration is part of Article 4 of our federal constitution. But more than that, the very proclamation of the Brazilian Republic during the first International Conference of the Americas, precisely during the period of sessions in which the Pan-American Union was being created, Brazil proclaimed itself a republic. And one of the political slogans of the time was precisely, "We are of the Americas and we want to be Americans." This is a bit in contraposition to the previous monarchical model that Brazil had through most of the 19th century. So in addition to being a founding member of the OAS and also hosting the Inter-American Juridical Committee, we have the honor to have had diplomats such as Secretary General Baines Suarez, who came to Washington to serve as Secretary General of the OAS. I'd like to make special mention of Ambassador Baines Suarez because of those 52 interviews that I commissioned with Brazilian authorities. I am happy to say that the most interesting was with Ambassador Vaina Suarez. He it reflected an in-depth understanding, a modern way of thinking. Today, the vision that he had at the time when he was Secretary General was extremely modern and innovative. And I was very inquisitive in my conversation with Vaina Suarez. He gave me a long interview. And, well, there's a permanent interest of Brazil in the OAS, which is also the interest of all of the countries who are part of our organization. My country also participated actively in building initiatives in the hemisphere. Brazil is and has always been committed to the charter of the OAS. That's the first thing that I should say. And so our 4 pillars of the organization: promotion and protection of representative democracy, human rights, multidimensional security, and integral development, will continue to receive the closest attention from the Brazilian mission. The promotion and defense of democratic values is not a difficult task. It entails a lot of work, but it's not difficult because these are easy values to defend. Even so, they are values that have faced challenges in all continents, and it'll be no different in the Americas. And so our Inter-American Charter, and this is 20 years since the signing of the Inter-American Democratic Charter. We always need to see to the implementation of its objectives. And Brazil has drawn lessons. In January, we made a new donation to the voluntary fund for electoral observation from the OAS. Our minister of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, our ministers, are authorities who visit Washington on a regular basis and engage in a very fluid and dialogue and keen dialogue in this respect. There are no major challenges. Brazil continues to, well, in May of 2021, we ratified the Inter-American Convention Against Racism, Discrimination, and Related Forms of Intolerance here at the OAS. And Brazil recently gave its total support to the group of countries who are friends of persons with disabilities. And the Supreme Court of Brazil and its judges have helped ensure a red light campaign. This is a campaign throughout the Americas to fight domestic abuse of women, domestic violence against women. In terms of multidimensional security, Brazil is supportive of hemispheric efforts to safeguard security in its multiple dimensions. We highlight the importance of the Declaration of Security in the Americas, which makes it possible for the member countries to visualize their different and distinct priorities. One view that we share is that the Americas are a region of peace, and the role of the OAS in that process must never be underestimated, and it should be given impetus with the absorption of the Inter-American, or it has been given extra force since 2006 with the integration of the Inter-American Defense Board. The true threats today are of a different nature. They're the ones that are threats to our democracies, our institutions, and the aspiration of our citizens who, as I said yesterday, are voters, are taxpayers, are consumers. They are voters. And they're the focus of all integration actions, as I see it, are the people themselves. This is from a humanist standpoint. So one mustn't ignore the challenges posed by organized crime to the well-being of our citizens, or terrorism. And all attacks on the rule of law and juridical security. Clearly, the business of crime is crime in all of its forms, be it drug trafficking, human trafficking, cyber crime. It is crime, and crime poses a threat to or attacks the juridical security of the rule of law, and therefore it also impacts the citizens who are much more than simply a unit of society. There's a great potential. We hope to be able to contribute to ever more concrete efforts with perceivable results. Now, development is the subject of the work of so many international organizations, development banks, trade organizations, health organizations. All of them are part of the pillar of development, or they have development as one of their pillars. And I think that a big task of the OAS is to perceive and capture what is its specificity and its objective contribution when it comes to development. I'm certain that there is a space for us to together promote development for the benefit of citizens. So despite the budgetary restrictions that we're all facing, Brazil has been able to contribute $200,000 to the Brazilian Cooperation Fund, which is with the Secretariat for Integral Development. This is for technical cooperation post-pandemic, with a particular focus on the Caribbean. Brazil views with great interest initiatives for strengthening and resilience in the post-pandemic. In particular, we would like the implementation of the regional hub for mRNA vaccines in Brazil to truly be regional in scope, and that it be able to benefit all the countries in terms of integration into the value chain and distribution of final products. We have been supporting, in terms of cooperation for development, a scholarship program in agreements between Brazilian universities and the OAS. This is the largest program of its type in the OAS, with more than 4,300 scholarships distributed, more than 41 million candidates inscribed. It includes high-level doctoral programs. Brazil's contribution to the program has been more than $50 million over 11 years. Finally, the four pillars of the OAS will have their objectives attained if we heed the budgetary aspects of our organization. In this regard, I would like to tell you that in 2019 and 2020, I participated directly in a high-level group in the government made up of the Foreign Ministry, Ministry of the Economy, and the Casa Civil, the special office of the executive, to ensure Brazilia's payments to international organizations. And there had been budgetary approvals in the Brazilian budget had been out of step with actual payments being made to international organizations. And I must tell you, I didn't know I'd be coming to the OAS, but there we were able to include among the 6 priorities of the Brazilian Foreign Ministry, the OAS. So I hope that the definition of priorities in the past may result in more timely payments here in this organization where I now represent Brazil. But I can tell you that the OAS was always a priority in that effort to make payments, to organize the payments of Brazil's payments to international organizations. The mission of Brazil is honored this year to chair the Committee on Administrative and Budgetary Affairs. I understand that Aurimar will be carrying out that function, and that's the designated representative. And I was consulted, and I supported the idea that Brazil would serve in this position. That is to say, Brazil is very much committed to means. If the means it can't attain the ends, well, it's very important for us that we be able to play a determinant role to see to it that the OAS can have its necessary, the resources it needs for sound performance in its activities. Now, I must also recall that we have the United Nations Fund and the new criterion for determining contributions based on new standards that has a direct impact on the amount to be of the contribution of each country. Now, I have a commitment to follow here at the OAS UN standards in this connection. Now, they need to be looked at carefully, but they do need to be looked at. Looking at the amounts, analyzing the amounts paid by each country is a task that we cannot get away from. And I have several other things to say, but I think I've taken quite a bit of your time, all of you. I think it's very important to be concise and concrete when one speaks. So I think I'm going to end my remarks here without reading all the pages that are written. The important thing about the spirit of cooperation is the spirit of building, of constructing that we can have. And Brazil is committed to collaborating with all of the activities of all of the working groups and all of the secretariats in pursuit of the key objective, which is making sure that all of this benefits citizens. I will provide the Secretariat with my full speech and ask that it be published in toto so that you can see the full scope of my statement. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Very much, Ambassador Brandelli. I now offer the floor to the coordinator.
Mr. Chairman, could you please request the floor?
¿Se salió del todo?
Ya está de vuelta. Aquí lo tenemos.
Okay. May I proceed?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Ambassador Brandelli for his presentation, and I now offer the floor to the coordinators of the regional groups and the delegations wishing to welcome the permanent representative of Brazil. We have Aladi, CARICOM, SECA, Canada, Mexico, the United States. In sequential order, who would like to be first? I see that Panama is ahead of the class. Panama, you have the floor.
I was sure. Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Central American Integration System, SECA, before I make comments on this point, we'd like to express our solidarity with our brothers and sisters from Guatemala and Ambassador Clavali for all of the victims that have succumbed today. And also, we should like to express our deep solidarity and sentiments of Brazil for all of the people who passed in the events that took place today in the city of Petropolis, given the landslides and the floods. On behalf of Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, and the Dominican Republic, we would like to most warmly welcome the permanent representative of Brazil to the Organization of American States, Ambassador Octavio Brandelli. The regional group SECA would like to welcome the arrival of Ambassador Brandelli, who's a member of the diplomatic community with more than 30 years of experience, with a long time-worn career, with various awards that he has received, As recognition of his sterling career, Ambassador Brandelli brings a long regional set of experience from Mercosur and a lot of expertise in international law and intellectual property, underscoring as well his various talents in this area. We truly believe that given his long academic experience, will make a great contribution to the Permanent Council and its work and to the organization itself. The Federated Republic of Brazil is a strategic partner of SICA and is one of the main regional observers and shares a lot of common interests, especially when it comes to regional cooperation and sustainable development. With the arrival of Ambassador Brandelli to this multilateral forum, we will be working hand in hand to move ahead with the agenda successfully, as well as take on other responsibilities. We would like to warmly welcome Ambassador Brandelli. We wish you the best of success from SICA. We welcome you and be welcome to the House of the Americas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Ambassador Ordonez. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Republic of Colombia, I'd like to warmly welcome and greet the permanent representative from Brazil to the Organization of American States, Honorable Ambassador Otávio Brandelli. The long professional and academic career of Ambassador Brandelli in areas such as intellectual property, economy, regional integration and trade undoubtedly will enrich the discussions and the analyses in the organization. He will contribute when we meet and will deal with all of the regional challenges sterlingly. His experience as a delegate to Mercosur and the Aladi Group shows us his commitment to integration and the spirit of working together with countries in the region. We can be absolutely sure that Ambassador Brandelli's diplomatic career will undoubtedly strengthen the very important role that Brazil has in the OAS, and in this regard will move forward and further consolidate the four pillars of the organization. We wish you the best of success, Ambassador Brandelli, in your new endeavors. And from the delegation of Colombia, we are more than willing to work with you in the defense of inter-American values. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we have the representative for Canada. You have the floor, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Of Canada. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Ambassador Brandelli. Canada and Brazil have enjoyed close diplomatic relations and a dynamic, multifaceted relationship for over 80 years now. Here at the OAS, we hope to continue our ongoing collaboration on shared priorities such as the promotion of democracy and human rights, the strengthening of security and defense cooperation, as well as management and administrative matters. On this last point, we pledge our full support to the delegation of Brazil as it assumes the chair of CAP this year. We know of Brazil's deep commitment to the OAS and to its founding values and principles, and we look forward to Brazil's continued contribution as a committed consensus builder within our organization. And if I may add, we also look forward to being reunited as Brazil's seatmate at the Permanent Council table as soon as conditions allow. Monsieur l'ambassadeur, une très sincère et chaleureuse bienvenue de la part de toute l'équipe.
Mr. Ambassador, a warm welcome from our entire team to the organization. Thank you very much.
Next, we hear from Bolivia. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ambassadors of the plurinational state of Bolivia, we would like to warmly welcome our ambassador from the Brother Republic of Brazil. Brazil recognizes the outstanding skills of Ambassador Brandelli and all of the achievements. As alternate generali, he occupied various positions representing his country. He has vast experience as foreign minister and has represented his country in some of the most important international arenas, as well as been representative of Brazil since 2019, has published more than half a dozen works on international law, in addition to other qualities that he has. Brazil would like to congratulate all of the experience from Itamaraty as a graduate. Brazil is truly a star in our region. It couldn't be any other way. We are absolutely sure of your success in the Organization of American States, and we understand and recognize how committed you are. Warm welcome, Ambassador. Thank you very much.
Mexico, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My delegation would like to most warmly welcome Ambassador Otávio Brandelli as the new permanent representative of Brazil to the organization, whose outstanding credentials and long-time career offer an opportunity to strengthen the position of his country, all dialogue, and offer constructive cooperation. Mexico and Brazil, as two major nations, share a friendly relation undergirded by cooperation of more than 137 years. And Mexico accompanied the commemorations of Brazil and the celebrations in Brasilia, underscoring a lot of the cultural points. We will continue to deepen not only our bilateral ties, but also our commitment to Latin American and Caribbean integration. Ambassador Brandelli, I wish you the best of success. And it'll be a pleasure to work constructively and professionally in all spheres in the organization, always supporting all of the principles enshrined in the Charter of the OAS with a view to striking consensuses through dialogue and undergirding multilateralism for peace and consensus. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and be welcome, Ambassador.
Much. Next, we have the representative for Venezuela. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Permanent Mission of Venezuela, I would like to warmly welcome Ambassador Brandelli. We are quite sure that, given the words we have heard, we're going to have beside us deep commitment, and rest assured you have our support as we move forward. In this regard, then, I would like to seize the opportunity to thank the minister who was always at the front of Brazil, and thank you for all of the cooperation. And let me reiterate, Ambassador, we wish you the best of success. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Be welcome.
The Ambassador for Belize. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman, on behalf of the 14 members of the CARICOM, let me first start by expressing our sympathies and solidarity with the people of Guatemala for that earthquake that took place today. We sincerely hope that the casualties will be kept to a minimum and that people will be able to recover their lives as quickly as possible. Mr. Chair, it is our pleasure from CARICOM to welcome Ambassador Bandelli to the OAS. We note his experience in regional integration and trade, and we are sure that that experience will be very helpful as we move forward in this organization and take on the challenges that we face. We look forward to working with Ambassador Bandelli to uphold the pillars of the OAS, which of course are geared towards maintaining peace, enhancing well-being and prosperity of our people. We also appreciate Brazil's contributions to manage the pandemic and to assist smaller developing states in our hemisphere. Brazil has a good reputation for that, and we want to express a sincere gratitude for Brazil's assistance. And again, a very warm welcome to Ambassador Bandelli. We look forward to working with you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have the ambassador for the USA, the representative for the USA. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The United States extends its congratulations and warm welcome to Ambassador Otávio Brandelli on his appointment as Brazil's permanent representative to the OAS. Ambassador Brandelli brings a broad range of experience from his service with Brazil's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all of which will inform and support his new role at the OAS. We look forward to working with you, Ambassador, and with the Brazilian mission, your delegation, to advance key OAS priorities, including democracy, human rights, security, and development in the Western Hemisphere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Ambassador Abdallah. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. As a brother or sister country of Brazil, we would like to say from the deepest of our heart that we are filled with emotions and very happy to have this ambassador from Itamaraty with his capacities. We're privileged to have him, but in addition to all of that, we are very happy to have the ambassador here with us, and the willingness across the board is going to be here with us as we take on these enormous challenges that we have. We know that you have wonderful children and you are very enlightened and you're a guiding light. Have a wonderful day.
Our presenters, presenting for the regional groups is Simon De Santi at Italia. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, ambassadors. Let me state from the outset that I will be speaking both on behalf of Italy and the other main permanent observers of Spain, France, and the Holy See. First of all, allow me to join others in expressing our sincere condolences and sympathies to Guatemala, to Ambassador Rita Claveri Diaz de Sciolli for the terrible earthquake experienced in her country. We are very close to Guatemala. Moreover, I wish to join colleagues in offering a very, very warm welcome to Ambassador Otávio Brandelli as he begins his work as permanent representative of Brazil to the Organization of American States. As Ambassador Brandelli already knows, there is truly a special and strategic relationship between member states and observer states here in the home of the Americas. And we are eager to work together to build upon this relationship in favor of a strong and effective multilateralism. In fact, I should recall that many of us, especially European countries that I'm representing today, like Spain, Italy, and France, are celebrating this year 50 years of observer status at the OAS. And this is something that we truly cherish, making the OAS not only the oldest regional organization in the world, but also among the most innovative multilateral organization, having invested in this strategic relationship with observers. Ambassador Brandelli, we are honored that you are now among us, and as we say in Italian, benvenuto, auguri, welcome, and we wish you the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'd like to thank all the coordinators for expressing their support for Ambassador Brandelli. So, esteemed colleagues, now with the kind permission of the delegation of Belize, permit me to provide a brief overview of the life and accomplishments of the Right Honorable Sir Manuel Esquivel, former Prime Minister of Belize. The Right Honorable Dr. Sir Manuel Esquivel, KCMG, PC, two-time former Prime Minister of Belize, passed away on February 10th, 2022 in Belize City, Belize. He was a founding member and leader of the United Democratic Party, a former Prime Minister who served as the country's second Prime Minister from 1984 to 1989 and served another term from 1993 to 1998. He was an educator by training. Former Prime Minister Esquivel was considered by many as a visionary, a mentor, and an activist. Born in Belize City on May 2nd, 1940, he attended St. John's College and later earned a Bachelor of Science degree in physics at Loyola University in New Orleans. He returned home and began a teaching career at his alma mater, St. John's College, that would last until 1984. During this time, he pursued a postgraduate certificate in physics education at Bristol University in England. Although he was a trained scientist, former Prime Minister Esquivel's calling was actually in the political arena. He was elected to the Belize City Council for 2 terms and served as UDP chairman from 1976 to 1982. In the 1979 election, former Prime Minister Esquivel was the UDP nominee for the Belize House of Representatives in the Freetown constituency. He was defeated by the incumbent Premier of Belize, named John Cadell Price, leader of the People's United Party. Former Prime Minister Esquivel was then appointed a minority member of the Belize Senate. He defeated Philip Goldson for the open UDP leadership post in January of 1983, becoming the first and thus far the only politician to be elected leader of a major Belizean political party as a senator. In December of 1984, he was elected to the House of Representatives from the newly formed constituency of Caribbean Shores in Belize City, and shortly thereafter, he became Prime Minister. He held the seat until 1998. To many, the former Prime Minister is most notably recognized by pioneering Belize's shifts from a mixed economy model to a focus on foreign direct investment and the growth of the tourism industry, of which the latter continues to form the cornerstone of the Belizean present-day economy. During his first 5-year tenure as Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Esquivel oversaw an International Monetary Fund economic stabilization plan. His sound fiscal management and encouragement of foreign investment in tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing helped invigorate the economy. His government achieved a balance of payment surpluses in 4 consecutive years. In 2018, at which time he was appointed by the Prime Minister Dean Barrow as senior advisor to government with the rank of minister, He was also appointed chairman of the Central Bank of Belize in January of 2011. He stepped down as chairman in September 2013 and resigned from the cabinet in March of 2014. In his post-political life, former Prime Minister Esquivel continued to be a towering figure in Belizean politics. He will be remembered for his disarming humility, his gentle demeanor, and his staunch love for his nation, Belize. He is survived by his wife, Lady Kathy Esquivel, and his 3 children, David Esquivel, Ruth Esquivel, and Laura Esquivel Frampton, who up until recently served as alternative representative of Belize to the OAS and Deputy Chief of Mission of the Embassy of Belize in Washington, D.C. We extend our sincerest condolences to the government and people of Belize for the loss of a pivotal political leader and a true statement. I am now pleased to offer the floor to the delegation of Belize, which has requested the inclusion of this item on the agenda. The delegation of Belize, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to pay tribute to the Right Honorable Sir Manuel Esquivel, former Prime Minister of Belize, who passed away on February 10th of this year at the age of 81. Chairman, thanks for that very good summary that you gave of Sir Manuel's life and his extremely important role in Belize. As you said, Sir Manuel served as Belize's second Prime Minister when he led the United Democratic Party to victory in 1984. He succeeded the Right Honorable George Cadle Price, who was Belize's first Prime Minister, who over the course of 30 years had led the country from colonial status to full independence in 1981. There were many who thought that the Right Honorable George Price would never lose an election, but Sir Manuel carries the distinction of bringing about Belize's first change of government. After his first 5-year term, Sir Manuel was defeated in 1989 by the Right Honorable George Cadle Price, but he rebounded and was again successful in 1993 when he was elected to serve a second term. Chairman, Sir Manuel came from humble beginnings. He was a renowned physics teacher at Belize's premier high school. Indeed, I had the honor of being taught by him, an unforgettable experience which steered me to my career in engineering. He was known as a man of few words with piercing logic, and his pivot into politics came as a surprise to many of us. But he was clearly the right man at the right time. He was a man of principle and very quickly established an unrivaled reputation for integrity in public office. In fact, the political pundits in Belize will tell you that both times when Sir Manuel lost his re-election bid, it was because he refused to take the politically expedient path, and thus he paid the price for that. Former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Dean Barrow, who served as Deputy Prime Minister under Sir Manuel, had this to say about him. He said, "There was never any question but that Sir Manuel was possessed of the utmost integrity, not just on a personal level, but as a leader of our party and as a leader of the country." Sir Manuel, Dean Barrow said, is straightforward in making it clear to his colleagues and to his ministers. Sir Manuel would say, "Do not bring to me any proposal that cannot pass the smell test. I won't even discuss it. And if you bring it, not only will I reject it out of hand, but there will be consequences to you, the person that dared to bring such a proposal." That absolute rectitude, that complete rigor when it came to principle, was what, above all, distinguished Sir Manuel from everyone else. So Sir Manuel was considered by his successors, by party supporters, and fellow politicians as a man of high integrity. But those who knew him well will tell you that his humility and soft-spoken voice was not to be mistaken for him being weak. He was, in fact, a very strong prime minister. The current prime minister of Belize, the Honorable John Briceño, who is from the People's United Party and thus was in opposition when Sir Manuel served as prime minister, had this to say. He said Sir Manuel was a man of upstanding character, very approachable and always kind and prepared to talk. Prime Minister Briceño related one occasion when, on behalf of his government, he thanked Sir Manuel for joining in a bipartisan effort addressing the border issues that Belize had still has with its neighbor. And when he thanked Sir Manuel responded, "What do you expect? This is something of national importance. Country comes before politics." So like I said, his penchant for sticking to principle often cost him politically. Chair, as you have heard, Sir Manuel was appointed to Her Majesty's Privy Council by Queen Elizabeth II in 1986, when he was conferred the title of Right Honourable. He was also appointed Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George in 2010. Even as we speak, Belize is currently celebrating the life of Sir Manuel Esquibel with a state memorial. I personally wish I was there, but our family is being represented by my father, who Sir Manuel, as Prime Minister, recommended to be the second Governor General of Belize. We, from Belize, from the embassy, we say a heartfelt thanks for the outpouring of sympathy and condolences that we have received on the passing of Sir Manuel. He was a true Belizean patriot and a great American person. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for those remarks, Ambassador Young. I now offer the floor to delegations. We now have first the representative from Mexico, the ambassador from Mexico. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My delegation joins the tribute to former Prime Minister Manuel Esquivel, who Mexico will remember as a fundamental player in building the state of Belize as of its independence in 1981 and as promoter of regional integration and strengthening of the bilateral relationships of friendship and cooperation with Mexico, particularly from the establishment of the Embassy of Belize in our country in 1986. Mexico was the first country to recognize Belizean independence. And since then, we have worked hard to build our fraternal relationship. Beyond the governments, our peoples increasingly cultivate this close relationship. This is something that Prime Minister Esquivel spoke of. For the best relationship between neighbors will be based on the proximity of persons and an ongoing dialogue. Please, sir, transmit to your government and to your people and to the Esquivel family Mexico's condolences upon the death of this illustrious statesman of Belize. Thank you, Chairman.
Next, we have Sir Ron Sanders. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I had the privilege of working with Sir Manuel Esquivel in the 1980s and 1990s on the international circuit, particularly in the Caribbean and the Commonwealth. In his 2 terms as Prime Minister of Belize, he spearheaded the modernization of that country's economy, diversifying it to include financial services and tourism. During his stewardship, his country's foreign policy affairs were dominated by its concern over a claim to all of Belizean territory by its neighbor, Guatemala. He approached that problem with a calmness that was a defining characteristic of his personality. He sought at all times dialogue and discussion with the Guatemalan authorities, convinced that international law, history, and the right to self-determination would produce a peaceful result to the problem. That today, Guatemala and Belize have agreed to submit their differences for legal settlement to the International Court of Justice at The Hague is a tribute to his leadership at critical times in Belize's history. As part of his ambition to transform his country's economy, he focused on trade opportunities, and he contributed greatly to the enhancement of the Caribbean common market and to the concept that CARICOM countries should negotiate their external trade arrangements collectively. Faced with the loss of markets in Europe for Belize's bananas and sugar, and recognizing that the countries of CARICOM were too small to bargain effectively on their own in the European Union and in the World Trade Organization, he became an advocate of joint trade negotiating machinery. Mr. Chairman, Sir Manuel never lost sight of the fact that while Belize was historically, administratively, and politically linked to the English-speaking Caribbean, it was physically and geographically a part of Central America. Therefore, he promoted links between the two sub-regions and worked to overcome the difficulties posed by distance and the absence of direct air and sea transportation. These are still difficulties that our two sub-regions confront today, but were it not for the early work by Sir Manuel to help bridge that divide, the efforts being made to bring CARICOM and SICA into a more cooperative relationship would now have been much harder. Mr. Chairman, Sir Manuel was a Democrat and a liberal thinker. He was committed to democracy in all its forms, including free and fair elections and the right to freedom of political expression. He accepted his loss of elections in 1989 and took up the post of leader of the opposition before he was re-elected Prime Minister 4 years later in 1993. In this sense, he contributed greatly to the political culture of Belize that enjoys a multi-party system of representative democracy that changes governments peacefully. Belize has lost one of its outstanding sons and leaders, and we mourn Sir Manuel's passing. We mourn it with his wife, his family, and with the people of Belize. We extend our condolences, especially to Sir Manuel's daughter, Mrs. Laura Frampton, who, as you said in your opening remarks, Mr. Chairman, was until last year a part of our family here at the Organization of American States when she served as the deputy head of the Belize mission. Sir Manuel is one of a generation of exemplary leaders of the Caribbean region, for whom the present generation has inherited a legacy of freedom, commitment to democracy, and the will to pursue our economic progress. Mr. Chairman, we are thankful for the life of Sir Manuel Esquivel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saron. We'd next like to make the floor available to Ambassador Rocaber. You have the floor.
I'm grateful, Mr. Chairman, to take the floor on behalf of the countries that are members of the Central American Integration System, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, and the Dominican Republic, on occasion of joining together fraternally in grieving with the government and people of our sister country of Belize, a member of this regional group, to commemorate the memory of Sir Manuel Esquivel, a politician, educator, activist, leader of Belize, who died last Thursday at 81 years of age. Honorable Sir Manuel Esquivel who had a prominent political career as a member of the House of Representatives and the Senate, was honored to hold the highest office of your country, serving as the second Prime Minister of Belize, holding that position from 1984 to 1989. And he also had a second term from 1993 to 1998. He was an educator for 18 years before beginning his political activity, and he's recognized as a person who was frank and held convictions that put forward work on behalf of the country over and above all else. That commitment he displayed once he took on the position as Prime Minister, making important decisions for the economic reform of Belize, promoting direct foreign investment and the growth of tourism. He remained active in politics, offering opinions on issues of interest for Belize, and after the pandemic struck, he was one of the first to give an example to his fellow citizens receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. We wish, Ambassador, to please transmit to your government, your people, and the friends and family of Honorable Sir Manuel Esquivel our deepest condolences at the loss of a great leader of the CARICOM and SICA community. We highlight his vocation for integration and his ongoing search to seek to benefit his fellow citizens of the region. Today, the member countries of the SICA in the Permanent Council come together to join this tribute, and we celebrate the legacy of Sir Manuel Esquivel and his recognition as an outstanding citizen of our region. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Very much, Ambassador. Next, we have Ambassador Abdallah. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ambassador of Belize was recalling all aspects of the history of Manuel Esquivel, referring to his time as a teacher, as an educator. For when I worked in Belize for a few years, in Guatemala and Belize, that's what I picked up on. It's like Manuel Esquivel had his own story. Those people who would pass on a profound patriotic sentiment, both those who were followers of his political party and also the opposition, those who did not agree with his political thinking. Belize has a marvelous condition, which is that they generate points of understanding, points of common ground, where the political system, which is very active, has very talented men. And as a side note, what Laura has said is not a minor thing. He's always making major contributions. So I can only imagine the pain that they're suffering. Not many countries have many persons like Manuel Esquivel who are humble, have a sense of patriotism, have a profound sense of humility. And is one of those people about whom said that one could not bear any rancor against him. This is really a very meritorious thing in politics. You don't, when you see someone and you don't really, well, you can tell that some people are all caught up in the rancor, but this was not the case of Esquivel. His characteristics were quite the contrary. So it is a sad and painful moment. I extend a huge embrace. I heard what the Ambassador Bailey said about that he would is here but would like to be there accompanying all of those who are grieving. So our full solidarity and a big embrace.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Next, we have the representative from the USA. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. The United States joins other delegations in sending our condolences to the family, the people, and the government of Belize on the passing of the former Prime Minister of Belize, the Honorable Sir Manuel Esquivel. We know this is a difficult time, and we want, through this tribute today at the OAS, we want to honor his service to his country, to the region, and to the fundamental principles of democracy and the rule of law. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we'd like to turn to Ambassador Mendes. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I take the floor on behalf of Secretary General Luis Almagro, the OAS General Secretariat, and on my own behalf, as today we join Belize on its third day of mourning for the unfortunate passing of the Honorable Sir Manuel Esquivel, second Prime Minister of Belize. After winning the elections in 1984 and then yet again in 1993, Prime Minister Esquivel endeavored to reform Belize's economic status and promoted diversification of the country's economic profile, including through tourism, which today remains a great foreign exchange earner for the Belizean economy, as has been mentioned by the previous speakers. Prime Minister Esquivel understood the importance of regionalism and maintaining multilateral relationships, believing that benefit to one was a benefit to all. This is seen by his endorsement of establishing a Caribbean Investment Fund in 1993, one of his many accomplishments, which sought to increase exports, foster import substitution, increase hard currency, and boost production of goods and services in the Caribbean region. And so I too echo CARICOM's statement in that Prime Minister Esquivel was a great contributor towards the economic diversification movement in the Caribbean. Equally of great importance, it should be recalled that Belize joined the Organization of American States in 1991, and throughout his 2 terms as Prime Minister, PM Esquivel strongly supported the work of this organization, which he considered a vital forum for the peaceful settlement of disputes between its member states and for collaboration between the sub-regions of our organization. He regarded Belize as a bridge between the countries of CARICOM and SICA, and never took for granted the positive alliances formed among the member states. While he was not in office when the Office of OAS Secretary General began to play a role in fostering talks between Belize and Guatemala, he supported the work of the OAS, especially the establishment of the adjacency zone between the 2 countries, which fosters community-to-community contacts across the adjacency line and verifies any transgression of the signed agreements and any potential incidents. Former Prime Minister Sir Manuel Esquivel was a visionary, a towering figure whose indelible economic policies continue to be important for Belize today, and he will be missed. Our deepest condolences to Lady Cathy Esquivel, to David and Ruth Esquivel, and to our former colleague Laura Frampton Esquivel, and to the entire Esquivel family. May he rest in peace. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary General Mendes. We have one final presenter, and that is from Belize itself, Ambassador Lin Young. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I take the floor again to express our heartfelt thanks for the kind words. Thank you to yourself, to Ambassador Mendes, Assistant Secretary General, and to my colleagues who have, for the outpouring of kindness and sympathies that you've shared with us. We sincerely appreciate it, and we will convey all the well wishes to the family of Sir Manuel, especially to Laura and Lady Esquivel, and of course to the government and the people of Belize. Again, thank you so much for the support. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished representatives, we will now proceed to the last item on the agenda, that is other business. I now ask if there are delegations that wish to bring any informative issues to the attention of this council. It appears that we have one request. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday, February 15th, Canada marked the first anniversary of the launch of the Declaration Against Arbitrary Detention in State-to-State Relations. Around the world, foreign nationals are being arbitrarily detained and used as bargaining chips in diplomatic relations. As the Declaration itself clearly states, this is unjust and contrary to international law. Citizens of any country could be targeted at any time. Yet, we are very happy to report that since its launch, support for the Declaration continues to grow. 67 countries from all continents, in addition to the European Union, have now endorsed the Declaration and stand united against this practice. And with the most recent endorsement by Guatemala in January, this total now includes 16 OAS member states. We encourage and welcome all countries that support human rights, the rule of law, judicial independence, and the rules-based international order to join us in endorsing the Declaration. And an important reminder, no specific countries are named or targeted, just the practice. Canada is deeply grateful for the support of our partners and allies in standing against this unacceptable and illegal practice worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing those thoughts. I see that there are no further requests for the floor. There being no further business to consider, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.